between Andy and Summer. You know what it means. Mel in the middle. And I have a feeling I'm going to be stuck once again with a $60,000 question that may only have a 10-cent answer. I hope not. Well, let's find out.
Well, don't worry. We're not going to ask you to define marriage again. Okay? We're kind of done with defining the marriage. Forget the marriage.
Okay.
Now they're married.
Now they're married.
Yeah, they went before a pastor
Yeah,
or
whoever
just
they
as
are.
the peace.
Whoever
And they went and either had it done by a legal license or a certificate that was honored by the pastor.
So they either did religious or state, and
Yeah,
somehow
and-
it's recognized.
And they did it in the Bible, meaning that certificate went right in the Bible so that it was done before God.
Fantastic.
Ooh, I like that.
You have no idea what she's going to talk about, and you have just set it up perfectly.
No kidding.
You were
I
perfect.
teed it up.
Yeah,
You teed yourself up
Yeah.
for a hole-in-one, Mel.
It's
Oh, I was going to
fantastic.
say a 300-yard drive.
There you go.
Yeah.
With a run
Hole in
after
one.
it.
300-yard drive into the hole.
Fantastic.
Winning! Tiger. Okay. So, here's our question. Is all divorce sin? Okay, is divorce sin? Let's back up.
So the perfect marriage that you just described, they did it all right. They've been married for a little while, and something goes south. Is it wrong? Is it sinful?
Is divorce sin? I would say yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, is
Meaning,
all divorce sin?
I would also put that in a category at this point. Yes, but are there legitimate biblical reasons for divorce? Yes. But those legitimate biblical reasons are on the grounds of sin being committed. So that sin is directly involved in that divorce.
For example.
For example, marital unfaithfulness. When that spouse engages in sex outside of marriage. And I would also put that in the category of pornography, meaning if it's a situation where porn just consumes one of the spouses, to me, that's a pretty fine line between adulterous action and a person so obsessed and consumed with pornography. It's like that's where the, in a sense, union is now.
Like it's their idol.
Yeah.
Even
Yep.
before God.
Yep. Yep.
So there's obviously this topic, stepping on toes. So you've just made a whole bunch of non-friends, right, who are listening, right? Because you've said that divorce is sin, and we know that the answer for all sin is Jesus.
Correct.
Right? So we're not saying it's the unpardonable sin.
No.
We're not saying that you can never. What we're just saying is, like every other sin, when selfishness takes over, sin is committed. The answer is Jesus, right? But we tend to back people in to corners where they have to defend themselves, right? So a lot of times in church, because we attach a lot of discipline with divorce, we now are forcing people to justify their divorce. So I've heard it said, and I guess I would use this with adultery and with pornography. Some people have said that the Greek, the Hebrew meaning of adultery isn't a one-time action. It's a pattern, a lifestyle of adultery, right? So again, I could say the same thing because you just kind of said it about pornography. It's not a lifestyle.
Right.
It's a one-time, like, hey, I got caught up in this. right?
Yep.
Type of a thing.
Yep.
But what we're doing there is it tends to me, that's a really splitting hairs thing in our culture today, right? Because the person, the man or woman who's facing their spouse committing an act of adultery isn't going to have much of a stomach for, well, they're not really an adulteress according to the Bible, they just did a one-time thing.
Yeah, and I would also say that Christ in Matthew 5, Sermon on the Mount, I'm not sure if he uses the word adultery as sexual immorality. I could be
think it's
wrong
fornication.
out there. Fornication, yeah. So I think there's some latitude in that term where it just isn't specific to the act of adultery, and would agree with Andy that it isn't referring to one act of adultery.
Right.
It'd be along the lines of serial
Yeah.
adultery.
Yeah.
Now, I think for me, I feel like I always go back to the heart, right? It's all about the heart. So if I'm in this great godly marriage, right, and my husband has a mistake,
Mm-hmm.
right, and he sleeps with someone, and he is like repulsed and repentant and all the things, and he is doing everything in his power, and he regrets every moment of it and all the things. Number one, I'm going to forgive him either way, because that's irrelevant. Me personally, I'm not going to look at that as, I don't think God looks at that and says that's an out for you to get out of the marriage, because he made a mistake and he's repentant.
Yep.
And he's being restored, and that could make your marriage way stronger, right? So I don't think that is personally, like, I don't think that's an out. But I think that goes the same for any. The reason I'm saying is all divorce sin is because we have vows, right? And if people go with typical vows, it includes the whole, like, not cheating, forsaking all others, right?
Yep.
And all that stuff. But what about the other vows? Like, what if you break the other vows? What if you don't do any of the other vows? What if you don't do any of the other vows, but you never cheat on me?
Yeah, you mean as in sickness and in health?
Any of it.
Any of it,
Even if
yeah.
you have personal ones you write to each other, personal promises that you make your vows and your covenant, and then you don't do any of them, but, like, stay under that I don't cheat on you thing.
Wow.
What if you cheat with your work, Mel?
Or, like you said, pornography.
Yeah.
See, I feel like if that stuff is all unrepentant, then the marriage covenant is broken by the person doing it. Whether it's that vow of forsaking other people, right? Or other vows or any other promise that you put in place in your marriage thing. If you're breaking any of those and you don't care, and you're even made aware of it, and then you're like, well, not repentant, then I think that is an out, if you want to call it that way. I don't like saying it that way, but
Yeah.
I would say that God would already look at that as a dissolved marriage, because one person completely backs out of it. It's like our faith. If we completely walk away from Jesus, we walk away from Jesus. I mean,
Yeah, I feel like you're going into that area. I think it's in 1 Corinthians 7 that Paul talks about the unbelieving spouse
Yep.
that kind of just like abandons the marriage.
yep.
And the kind of abandonment you're describing, Summer, is one that's more subtle than the overt one.
Right. So that's why everybody could look at it and say, well, there's no grounds for divorce there.
But no less
Right.
damaging, right? Like, so if you have to try to get over an act of adultery, that has tremendous effect on anybody, right?
Yeah, and what if a
men and
baby
women-
comes out of it?
But men and women who can do that
You
are
know?
amazing to me,
Right.
right? But if you also are a woman or a man who has endured 20, 30, 40, 50 years of marriage where someone has repeatedly not cared about their vows that they made, They haven't taken care of you in sickness. They haven't taken care of you and protected you. They haven't even abandoned all others. They've forsaken all others sexually, but they haven't forsaken all others in other ways, right?
Yeah, as emotional.
Right.
That is not giving the spouse the emotional support that is given to another.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, I would agree with Tony Campolo. I remember him saying one time he was in conversation with a woman who said, in the marriage, I'm the whore, and my husband is emotionally attached to another woman. In other words, she said, I wish I wasn't the whore, and the woman, meaning the woman, the married woman, was totally bereft of any kind of emotional attachment.
So, if she walked away from that, is God looking at that as sin? If he's already separated from her, except on paper.
I know, and his heart was separated.
Right.
His heart was separated from the woman.
So it doesn't see, to me, the second that takes place in one of the people, right?
Mm-hmm.
God already says that's void. That's null. You're done, because you just broke that half of the agreement. So really, if I just stay there like the whore, then I'm a fool. And then I am a whore, and then I'm just being used.
Yeah, I know, and it's horrible. That would be horrible.
But what's worse? Living that way or just signing the papers that just acknowledge the facts that already exist.
Yeah. Wow.
I think it's hard because we don't want to give permission for people to just walk away.
Right.
And one of the things that's hard in this case is who's going to decide whether vows have really been broken or not? Right? Are they unrealistic expectations? Right? Are they just perception? Right? So again, I think it's funny. There are a lot of marriages that have gone along for 10, 15, 20 years and they've just worked. Mm-hmm. Right? But there has been we're not as close as we were, we don't do this,
Mm-hmm.
and then all of a sudden one of the parties perceives that someone else is getting something, and all of a sudden it's like, well, wait, you're giving another person that which you should be giving me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's never been part of the marriage. Right? So again, we know marriages where the people have kept their marriage together because they simply don't spend time together. It just works better if they don't spend time together, right?
Mm-hmm.
We know people that don't vacation together, they don't visit family together, they don't do any of these things together, but they're married, right?
Yeah.
They've stayed married.
Yeah.
But if that's the agreement, and all of a sudden one of those parties starts spending time with somebody else or talking to somebody else or doing those things, and they're like, wait, you're now giving someone else. Well, wait. Right? There's this idea of, hey, sometimes, we're changing and we're looking at things and saying, hey, this is no longer right, this is no longer fair, and that's not really complicated to sift through. Right? So I think, we don't want to condone sin.
Yeah.
Right, but at the same time, I like what Summer challenges us to think.
There's
way more to the marital covenant than just forsaking all others.
Right.
And if you're going to say, not you personally, but if a person's going to say, hey, only one out of this list really matters, then why are we saying all the rest of them?
Yeah, right.
Why aren't we just changing it to, hey, when I feel like in sickness and when I feel like in health and when I feel like in...
Well, and
joy and sorrow.
This is why I originally wanted to say, what really defines marriage. Because if you go through what he just said, and all those years of, marriage of convenience, right, that just works, and you don't see each other or whatever, and then one of those people actually falls in love with the one that God intended for them, and they find that person, well, then what does that mean?
It means, I feel, in that case,
what does that mean?
you got to take up it's part of taking up your cross.
What do you mean?
Meaning the person a person who is married sees the person, if I'm hearing you right, sees the person that, wow, I'm really attracted to that other person, while the other spouse seems to be distracted or not really participating in the marriage. Still, I think at that point it's part of bearing the cross in marriage.
But if they, so again, I'm just asking a question. If they haven't kept their marriage vow, so let's say that one person is really trying.
Yeah.
The other person hasn't tried for years, right?
Yeah.
The only reason they're still married is because the other person's trying.
Right.
Right? If at that moment, I guess the question is, in God's eyes, if this person has spent years breaking their covenant, in God's eyes, if this person were to say, I've given this 15, 20 years, it hasn't worked, I'm going to do this, right? In God's eyes, is if they get divorced and this person goes over here, is that a sin?
Then who's initiating the divorce? Is the person?
Doesn't matter.
Let's say that the person who's been trying, right, who's been trying to make it work, and they finally say, "Listen, you haven't kept your covenant from minute one of us being married, right? So I'm no longer, like, you broke your covenant. We're no longer married."
But the other one says, "But I still want to be married, though you feel like I'm breaking the covenant."
Right. If the other person looked at it and said, like, no, I still want to be married to you because you're doing all the work.
But I'm not going to change.
But I'm not going to
anything.
change. I'm not going to fix it. I'm not going to work. I'm not going to help.
I just want to hold you hostage. Is it? Does God really look at that and say, "Yep, that's a marriage"?
That is a very good question.
See, and again, I look at it, Mel, from the standpoint of God with Israel. God made a covenant with Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Israel didn't keep their part.
Right.
They broke their covenant in a million different ways.
Yep.
And God finally said, like, he does not force them to stay married.
Right.
He said, "Listen, you want to go? Go." Right? You go. Right?
God divorced them. And the Bible says that.
Right.
It's
and
very clear.
At one point, God, he initiated it. Like, said, "I'm keeping my part of the commitment, but you're not. So we're no longer married," right? It wasn't just their thing. And so we look at that because everybody wants to talk about marriage. Everybody wants to talk about marriage because that's the example that God uses. But God uses the whole example, right? Which says there's more to keep in the covenant than just, I love the fact that God said, "I don't want your sacrifices. They're meaningless.
They're perfunctory.
Exactly.
So you're talking about a perfunctory spouse.
Right.
I'm talking hypothetically anything to get you thinking and have to work.
But I go back to what we talked about offline last week after we made our other marriage video, like the Abraham, Hagar, Sarah thing. Like, God told him to listen to Sarah and send her away. But a couple verses prior, he said, "She is your wife." Now, why would he say send her away? And to me, I look at it and I'm like, well, because clearly God did not. God said it's your wife, but he didn't look at it as a valid marriage. That's not who he intended for Abraham. So he was like, yeah, well, there's the consequence, right? You have Ishmael, you have all this drama.
Yeah.
You have all these things you have to live with permanently now. And now you're going to go through the pain of losing them. But send her away because that was never my plan. You guys screwed up.
Mm-hmm.
So that marriage was not honored by God.
What do you think the question with that is? Did God give Hagar to Abraham? Or did Sarah give Abraham?
No,
Sarah.
he did. Right.
Right, so Sarah is the one that said, "Take her as your wife."
So every marriage is not put together by God. I think that's clear.
Well, if it is, then God just somehow ordained divorce in that case and said it's okay to send her away.
Well, and also basically admitted himself he made a mistake. Which he does not do.
Correct.
Super glad you're in the middle, Mom.
Boy, you see how this show gets everybody to think in ways that we really haven't even thought about. And I admit, there's stuff brought up here today that's new to me. That is something I haven't considered before, which makes a lot of sense. And here's what I haven't considered. Here I've conducted a ton of marriage ceremonies. I walk through the pre-vow question. Will you have married to be your wedded wife to live together in the holy state of matrimony? Will you love him, keep him, and forsaking all others, keep yourself only for him? And then you do the vows. Then, will you have Mary to be your wedded wife? Will you, okay, how's it go? In sickness and in health, in joy and in sorrow, in plenty and in want, to love and to cherish till death do us part? That's a lot in that vow. And what I'm saying is, I have not given thought to those who do not fulfill that aspect of what's said in those vows. I've only looked at it, I feel, from the perspective of forsaking all others. What if you have that first component and what you see in the vows is just words with nothing behind it? Just words without substance. Just dead words in those vows. And that's something I have to give more consideration
Scary, right?
to. It is, yeah.
So, I don't know the answer to all these questions.
Yeah.
Obviously. I say maybe then we just don't judge everybody for being divorced, or how we think it needs to be, or what we think it needs to look like, because we don't know all the details.
Right. And I haven't, and I always go back to what Christ says about divorce, that passage in Matthew and Mark, and I always want to be faithful and true to that first and foremost, and what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 7. And I don't have a good answer right now. But it should make us rethink, the objective of marriage that is in crisis or falling apart is ultimately reconciliation. That's the ideal. That's what we want to work towards. But then there's those situations in reality that don't work out that way.
Well, the key, like I said, is the heart, and you need
you're correct.
Two hearts.
I know. I see it.
You can reconcile anything if you have two hearts.
Two hearts,
in
right,
Jesus.
right.
But if you have one heart in Jesus and the other one's not there, then what are you reconciling with? Yourself?
Yeah, and I think what Summer has done is help me to see there's things going on here that are a lot deeper than an action. Because I think of action, adultery, action, viewing pornography. Where is the heart? In other words, there's something deeper than the behavior and action.
Yep.
What is the issue of the heart? And has that been given fullest consideration? And I would say I have not considered it that fully. Yeah. So, thanks, Summer, for putting me in the middle once again.
Oh, you're welcome.
Without a good answer.
Can always count on me now to make it awkward.
It sure is. And I feel still awkward at the end of this broadcast recording today. And I hope this might have helped you to get you to think as well, even if it makes you feel awkward like me. Well, until next time, this is Mel in the Middle.
Bye, guys.